welcome to Foster Change, where we talk about all things life, child welfare, and parenting. I'm back with Marla, the local therapist, and she often helps foster and adoptive families. So we always love talking to her. Today, we're going to talk about siblings, the rivalries, just kidding. Specifically more about in the child welfare system, we talk a lot about bonds and attachments and siblings and togetherness and that type of thing. So I, on the front end, want to talk about what is the importance of siblings, like the sibling relationship, like why is it so important that we even discuss it?
Well, I'm glad to be here. I love being with you, Lauren. So this is really exciting. And siblings is kind of a fun topic to talk about because there's a lot of rivalry, but there's a lot of growth when we have siblings. And so there is something really magical about that sibling relationship. And so the reason that we should really look at the kind of the why behind what siblings do is that they're one of our most first and basic ways that we learn about relationship. We learn about compassion, we learn about empathy, and we learn about how our actions might affect others. And we learn that maybe people, we should care about them a little bit, or we should be nice to them, or we get to practice pretty much. They're like our little test subjects in a way. And we know they're probably not going to go away because they live in the same home as us. And so
True.
Versus a friend who might say, I don't want to be your friend anymore, which is also really powerful as well. And often does produce a lot of change, but we really get to practice a lot with our siblings, what works, what doesn't work. And we really get to understand, like, how am I going to foster this relationship, hopefully for a lifetime?
Yeah. We have in our house, so we have 4 girls. So the drama level can be here at any given time. We've got one who does this a lot and says, I'm not going to be your sister. And I go, that is not how it works, child. That is not how it works. And then 2 seconds later, she's like, you know, as typical sisters, right? Like they fight and then they're like, you want to have a sleepover? Okay. And I guess we're sisters again. Like, okay. So yeah, we get that. The ins and outs and the sibling relationships are just one of those things. I grew up with 3 brothers. So it's, you know, it's always an adventure. I feel like in a house that has a lot of kids, you never know which ones are going to get along on any given day. And yeah, we've been there. I think it's a beautiful thing though, having a lot of kids and watching them kind of like navigate through life's conflicts. You know, we tell them like, if they don't want to play with you, maybe you should, like, why? What is it that you're doing that's irritating them? And then, you know, there's a lot of like those hard conversations, like, okay, well, maybe that's not the game that they want to play right now. Is that maybe possible? And then it's, well, okay. Okay, well, if you want to play with them, maybe we should talk about playing what they're playing right now, or maybe you can come up with a compromise. And I love watching them kind of solve problems on their own, only getting involved when necessary. That's what I typically try to do.
And that's actually something that I spend a lot of time in my therapy practice helping families do, is just be the sportscaster. Oh, so you're saying you want to play Jeopardy, but you're saying you want to play hopscotch. Okay, Jeopardy, hopscotch. Huh, I wonder how you guys are going to figure it out. Oh, Jeopardy, hopscotch. You guys are, now you're yelling at each other. Oh, wow. Oh, now you lowered your voice. Oh, look at you guys. And all of that is just me sitting back and watching them figure it out. Now, I might be like, hopscotch should win, but I think that they should be playing Go Fish. And it doesn't really matter what I think. It really is, how can I help my kids just figure things out for themselves? And it doesn't have to be equitable, because they'll sooner or later go, why do I always lose? Wait a minute, I always lose because I always give in. Oh, maybe I don't have to give in.
That was me. So growing up, my brothers would always tell me I was such a sucker in so many ways. I was the oldest, and I used to take care of, like, very, very, very nurturing, probably a little, I say nurturing, they say bossy. So I would say, okay, they would say, we'll help you clean your room if you help us clean ours. So I would help them clean theirs. I'm like a very particular person, so I enjoyed the cleaning a little bit. And then I'd be like, all right, let's go clean my guys. Where'd you go? Where are they? Be gone, out the door, already playing. Their room's clean. They're done. They're not, you know, I can't tell you how many times I fell for that. And then I finally was like, all right, we're doing my room first. And then they were like, nah, it's okay. We'll do ours. You do yours. See you outside. So
Yeah.
yeah, I fell for it multiple times over. But to that end, I learned,
Yeah.
okay, fool me once, fool me 17 times. Maybe I should change my ways. And so I do remember that. And I try like to kind of reciprocate that with my kids and allowing them to kind of figure out things on their own, because I think that that's just a healthy life skill. And I think that that's,
Absolutely.
that's in like a normal sibling household where you have, but then when you add in, and in the child welfare system, just talking about trauma is just what it is. It just, so when you add in some of these more complicated layers of, okay, I know we've talked before about me having to speak with my older kids about why my younger kids do certain things, and how it's, not, they're coming from a place that my big ones might not understand. And so just understanding that you don't understand it has been a monumental step for my big ones to understand a little bit more about my little ones, just like accepting that they don't understand, and helping them anyway. And it's been awesome to see my big ones grow in that, from doing that, but like blending the two things and having them form this like, okay, conflict resolution, and that's been awesome. So I don't know if there's ways we can, what are some things you would suggest in establishing like healthy bonds between kids that come from different places but live in the same house? That could be step families, that could be adoptive families, foster families. That looks like a lot of different things in today's world. So I like, what does that look like under the same roof, kids coming from different backgrounds but yet getting them to be connected as siblings?
Yeah. And so sometimes it's, when we start to think about like, what did families used to do to help family bonding time? And a lot of times that was like some game time, that was family dinners, taking walks together, going to the park together. And so sometimes when we go back to some of those old ways that we bond together, understanding that sometimes with our foster kids, that might be something that is really new and very uncomfortable,
Yes.
or it could be tied to some other things, going on. And so some of those things are things that we can try and infuse, into their regular life now. And we can start talking to our bio kids about that. In other kids came from other homes and there might have been other rules. Here, we're going to work on getting them towards the same rules, but that might look a little different. It's kind of like when you go from one teacher in first grade to a different teacher in second grade, the
Yeah.
rules are a little different. It's kind of hard in the beginning. You're like, but I used to be able to get up and sharpen my pencil anytime. And now the teacher's like, no, you have to raise your hand. And you're like, oh, And so sometimes what we do is we just kind of try and link some of those things. And then it can be really hard to change. But then we also say sometimes our little, our foster kids, their brains are kind of like really scared all the
Yeah.
time. And so remembering the time that we went to the fair and you were going to go on that roller coaster and you were kind of freaking out. Now imagine that feeling almost all the time.
Yeah.
And that would be really hard, right? But if we asked you to go to dinner and you're like freaking out. And so we just really try and explain things to kids in a way, and they might go, oh, well, what helped you when you were freaking out? Now you were also freaking out because you were a little bit scared, but you were also really excited. I want you to flip flop that. Maybe your foster kid is really scared most of the time and they don't
Yeah.
really know what to do with that, or really angry most of the time because now they're not living with their family that they grew up with, or maybe they don't get to see their siblings, that they grew up with, or their aunt who was their safe person. And so
Right.
all of that stuff is just things that we try and pull into our kiddos' lives. And so somewhat just like doing that sportscaster thing could be, oh, remembering that their brains work a little different. So how can we calm down? And then we'll help them calm down. And so we can help our kids, our bio kids who might hopefully not have
Yeah.
grown up with the same level of trauma,
Yeah.
help their foster siblings go, okay, you got this. We can do this together.
Yeah.
Or, wow, you're really freaking out. Let me go get an adult. Because
Yeah.
again, we shouldn't burden the bio kids with
Right.
something that is way out of their league. Because
Yes.
let's face it,
Agreed.
us adults are struggling. And so
Yeah.
we can't ask a 7-year-old or 10-year-old who doesn't have a fully formed brain, to
Yeah.
be able to like just like pinch it for us, you know?
Yeah.
We could say, all right, you got this. I love you, even though things are a little crazy right now. I'm gonna go get an adult to help you. And that might
Yeah.
be all we help them do is just get someone to help them, you know,
Right.
and really kind of say, what is okay for you when your sibling might act like this, or this? And what are your responses going to be? Because we,
Right.
in our family, we don't hit, we don't yell, we don't push, we don't bite. And so
Yeah.
if someone's doing that to us, even though, you know, they might not have learned quite yet that they shouldn't, they don't quite get that rule yet. What could we do so that you get safe and then we can help them learn how to be safe too? And a lot of that is just that navigation, you
Yeah.
know, and what can they do? Because you know, that's something that our siblings, bio or foster, do love to push our buttons. And so, what are we going to do?
Right.
And a lot of that is, all right, I can disengage or I can get myself really calm, you know,
Yeah.
when someone else is doing something
Yeah.
and I can use my words.
Yeah.
Those are
Oh
like your
gosh.
choices.
Use your words. If I say use your words 2,700
Yeah.
times in a day, that's probably not an exaggeration. Use your words. Use your
Yeah.
words. On the soccer sidelines, this is a total side note. On the soccer sidelines, my mother-in-law is always like, that is not what you say to them on the soccer field. I'm always like, use your words. When they're like,
Right.
instead of saying like call it, communicate, I'm always like,
Yeah.
yes. She's like, I'm like, it's what I just say it so much. It's reflexively what I say.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
And my older daughter will look at me and be like, really? We're not two. It is what it is.
But I noticed you zipped your lips and you didn't say anything. And so I think as adults, that is part of that reflecting and that sportscaster kind of thing is, oh, you both are just grabbing stuff and nobody's using their words. I wonder if someone's going to use their words next so that they know, hey, I'd really want to play with that instead of just using
Yeah.
our hands to grab everything.
Yeah.
Oh, and then like we start to be able to help them navigate things. And what's really good is that we kind of act as that cheerleader. Like, I know you guys got this, you
Yeah.
know, even though we're like
Yeah.
dying inside. Oh
Yeah.
my God, my kid is just melting down in the store, you know?
I know. Well, they're like crying, and my husband will be like, "You're insane." I'm like, "I believe in you. You can do it
Yes.
too." And they're like, because they don't want to put their shoes away or something, and like it's a full
Yeah.
blown meltdown. I'm like, "It's just I could be like, it's just
Right.
shoes," but I'm like, "Okay, you can do it. I believe in you. You can do hard things." And then I start singing, and then they're always like, "What's wrong with this woman?" Whatever.
Right.
I can sing or cry.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
I
not
can sing or
crying,
cry.
you're not having a tantrum, things like that. And so
Yeah,
I'm a quirky person. I know we've talked before. We're both kind of that
I'm a
quirky,
quirky
like
person.
weird individual, and we should probably play to our strengths at that point. So if you've got a good sense of humor, if you're a bit quirky, if you love to sing, if you love to dance, you know, whatever your thing is, like maybe that should be part of your parenting strength, you know? And like
Yeah,
I would
I
absolutely
love
be
that.
like, you got this. You got this. Look at you.
Yeah.
The shoes, they're closer to the spot. Oh my God.
I
Way to
have a song for
go.
everything. We had like a poopy song for a while, and listen, my husband doesn't ever sing the song correctly, and it's become a thing too. So like if I make up a song, he'll do, I don't know, he puts his own spin on it, and I'm like, that is not the song that I made up, but whatever, you do you. Yeah,
The
so
good thing
sibling,
is that
so in the siblings, right? So in the child welfare system, because bringing it back to the child welfare system,
yeah,
one of the things that is really common, and we talk about all the time in the child welfare system, is the importance of sibling relationships. And I know we discussed this before about you have a weight put on keeping biological siblings together. And I think that that's beautiful. And I think that it's important to keep siblings together. But I struggle to see the point in taking a child. And this is something that is suggested now that we do, but there is some change coming. So there's hope on the horizon here. I know we've been trying. So one of the things that has happened, it happened to us in our case because we have 2 out of 6. And so we've had a lot of sibling conversations with caseworkers and these types of situations. And so a lot of times what they'll do is they'll say, okay, we understand that they've been with you for years and they're bonded and attached here, but they've got siblings that, you know, either we just found or have been sitting in this other home. And now this person's going to take, you know, the 4 of them and keep them together over here. And you're taking a kid that is in a home where they're bonded and attached to the family that they're living with, and they have, for all intents and purposes, siblings in that home, right? That are maybe not biological, but they are siblings. And you're going to move them to a home with biological siblings that they're not connected, bonded, or attached to, just for the sake of keeping siblings together. And so I know we talked about the importance of the sibling relationship and developmentally what it does for children and all of the benefits that come through these life experiences. But to me, there's a distinction between the biological and then the bonding. And is that something that you can kind of speak to, differentiating the two and the importance and the significance of, which is more important, like moving a kid from where they're bonded and attached, or keeping them with a sibling that they, maybe never knew?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's so nuanced, but almost always it's better to go with the bond and attachment. So I've worked with families where their caregiver died, but they were a blended family. So they grew up with that step sibling. And because they were not biologically related, they then went into two different homes. And how horrifying that would have been
It's
for
terrible.
that child. It was awful and was very traumatizing. And so I've worked with kids in the foster system that were placed with siblings where they were the sibling that was abused, but their other sibling wasn't. And oh my goodness, it was more detrimental because the other sibling was coming from a place of disbelief
Yeah.
and encouraging the return into that abusive home, because that was the home that they grew up in, which was very different than the home that that abused child grew up in. And so again, there's like these very differing pieces, where it is more important to me that is a healthy, bonded, and secure attachment that can be created or
Yeah.
continue to be. So when a family is in a foster family and they never grew up with those other siblings, it's wonderful to get them reacquainted.
Yeah.
But that's a very different thing than saying, we're just going to place them now because they have this blood relationship.
Yeah.
Just because there's a blood relationship, and this does also talk to kinship care, because maybe
Yes.
a distant relative surfaces years later and they're like, oh look, we found a kin relative who can take them. But that just because there is that blood relationship doesn't really mean that that's a good, securely attached, a
Right.
relationship. And so for me, that attachment is the basis of all things. And so
Yeah.
sometimes siblings should be together, because it's the most healthiest thing. And of course, especially when they're removed from the home, and they're close in age, and or not even close in age, because sometimes, of course, we have the older one who was looking out and
Yeah.
protecting the younger one. And that's why they went into care, was because the older one saw that the younger one was about to be abused. And that's when they spoke up. And so
Right.
then to say, oh, well, they're like 10 years apart. They should just go into two different foster homes.
Yeah.
Wait, you took the kid who protected and
Yeah.
now they're living somewhere else, right? So
Right.
we look at the relationship, we look at, what went on in their life, and then as much as we can from the minute of removal, keep kids together, you
Yeah.
know. But when that's not possible, looking at that bonded relationship that may be formed and decide, is this the right thing to do?
Yeah.
Especially when sometimes it's true, other kids that they never knew, um, mom and dad might then have another kid that they never knew. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that all of a sudden that means that they have to be in the same home. It would be
Right.
nice, but sometimes that does not. It does not mean like rip kid out of a securely attached home and put
Yeah.
them all together now.
Yeah. It's a straight, to me,
So
it's a strange thought. It's a very strange thought, but I
yeah,
understand you see siblings and you want to keep them together. But like I said, there's hope on the horizon. There are some
yeah,
clauses, for lack of better terms. There's they're
yeah,
looking into childhood developmental psychology now, and a lot of these like
yeah,
session meetings with senators. So that's to me really encouraging and promising. I love that they're actually looking at that and going to start letting that kind of influence how they do things. I think that that's a beautiful thing. So we'll see what comes of that. We are definitely involved in some of those conversations, or at least like really trying to be in others. So we're working on that for sure, trying to be involved in those conversations and about, the science, what the science says about childhood development and bonds and attachments specifically. I think that is a huge thing for us to look at when you're talking about child's welfare. I think talking about the best interest of a child, you have to look at where they're bonded and attached. And a lot of times that is with siblings that they are living with when they're removed, or sometimes when they're you know, removed and they have to be placed separate, but then being able to get them back together when there is a bond and attachment, you know, just kind of like addressing, like you said, it's very nuanced and kind of addressing that
Yeah.
situation as it arises, and as appropriate, and allowing the law to provide for the decision to be made per the child's best interest and not per the biological basis of their sibling relationship.
Right. I mean,
That's
in this case, that blood is thicker than water doesn't really hold many of the times.
no,
It's very much about, attachment is, is thicker than water.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like, I don't know. To me, it's a no brainer, but it's been something that's been one of those hot button things for a little while here, and I get it. So in our situation, we have 2 of 6, and they're so we keep our 2. We have 2, and then a family friend of ours adopted 2 of them. We kind of like brought them to the table a little bit, and we're like, hey, when it came time for
By the
adoption,
way,
and
yeah.
the foster mom wasn't going to adopt. We found people that we knew wanted to adopt, and I knew it would be a great match. And so it worked out very serendipitously almost, and it was very nice. And so we see them all the time now, but they had been in foster care for years, and they had been living in separate homes for years. And one of the things was you talk a lot about some of the special needs and different ways of parenting and different styles, and different needs, even in for us, there was different needs in biological family relationships, given the age of our kids and the age of the older siblings. So there's different needs. And so balancing that under one roof became one of those like really questionable things. But so in the best interest of the children, they're and where they're at now makes my heart so happy. They're thriving, they're doing really well, and we're able to keep the kids relationally close. And so even though they're not proximally close, like under the same roof, living in the same house, they're relationally very close. And I think that they're healthier for that, because in our case, I don't think that they're triggers for each other. I think that they do bring out a lot of the best in each other, but in true sibling form, they do also stir up some things, from when they did live together, because the only other time they lived together is before removal. And so
Yeah.
I think that, in ours, that's been an interesting dynamic to watch unfold. So one of the things that I find interesting is how one sibling can be a trigger for other siblings. And sometimes it's better if they don't live together, even if they were living together. I know someone personally who was able to adopt, I think it was 3 out of 4 siblings, but the older sibling was such a trigger for the younger ones, and they were under such pressure to adopt all of them, but it wasn't in any of the kids' best interest. And there was another home that was available for the older one. And it was just watching them navigate and walk through that, and the pressure that was put on them to make a decision that was counter to the children's best interest. And even the kids were all on board with the one. It was a strange situation, but I'm not sure if you want to speak to the ability of one sibling to trigger the other siblings and how that, affects them long term.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think even in the healthiest families, siblings can be a trigger. So then we take siblings that have grown up possibly in really terrible situations. They could also have their own mental health issues as well. They could have been born sometimes under the influence or with the influence of some drugs in their system. And so other times they've gone through a domestically violent home. And so we know that some of the things that we've lived through, we might relive or, actually start to reenact in our
Yeah.
lives if we haven't worked on those things. But often, because we're biologically related, we might look like the person who was the perpetrator as well. We might act like them, smell like them,
Yeah.
sound like them. And so there's all of these things that through no fault of our own, we could actually trigger somebody else. And so a lot of times there are reasons that some siblings just maybe could have a very big struggle to be under the same roof.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes, especially the kids who've gone through those traumatizing family of origin homes the longest, could have the hardest road. And so they need the most
Yeah.
intensive of therapies. And it could actually hold back some of the kids who, in effect, got out quicker.
Right.
And
Right.
so or the older one often, or maybe whichever one was perpetrated on the most, could have obviously a longer road and have a lot more where they just keep either pushing the other kids' buttons, or their mental health issues are such a re-triggering event, and it's hard to keep stability in the home. So of
Yeah.
course, when it's one kid, that's easy. When it's two kids, you can kind of a little bit separate them, but not always. And now we're talking 3 and 4 kids, again, that's really hard to divide one or even two parents, to be able to maintain, within the home. So absolutely,
Yeah.
a sibling could be a trigger. That's absolutely true. So that's something that we do look at the health of everybody. And what we would want is even the triggering sibling to get the healthiest home. And so it sounds like
Yeah.
in your case, you actually got to see that happening, which is a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. I've worked with kids where in the home, the older one was perpetrated on multiple times from infancy on. And the reason that they came into care was that they saw that their younger sibling was about to be perpetrated on, or was perpetrated on, and so
Right.
they said something, which is great, but they also were so unhealthy together. It actually, even though that sounds like that should have been a really bonded and supportive relationship, that actually was so unhealthy. And so having them in two homes was the only
Yeah.
option. And so also sometimes kids aren't removed immediately and placed in a
Mhm.
foster home. Sometimes they go into kinship or into a group home. And sometimes
Yeah.
some really bad things, or not so great things, can happen to them. And so I've seen kids who've gone through those experiences as
Yeah.
well, or just the fact of being passed from one family member to the other. Nothing bad happened, but what's kind of that core belief? I'm damaged, I'm no good, I'm unlovable. And then they start to reenact that even in the loving home that wants to adopt them.
Right.
That's awful, but when you're having to deal with so many other siblings, it's kind of hard to be able to really wrap them up in
Mhm.
everything and really create that loving experience that they
Yeah.
need. And so we do, it's kind of like looking at when people go into the emergency room, you know, there's a reason that we go into the emergency room. They can go, okay, you can wait because you need a stitch or two. You're not going to be that. The person
Right.
with the gunshot, we need to get them right away into
Yeah.
surgery. And so we can triage. When sometimes when we're pulling in a whole bunch of adoptive kids, it's very hard to,
Yeah.
or foster kids, it's very hard to triage within that home when they're all up here in
Yes.
dysregulation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's true.
yeah.
It is true. We've watched that kind of unfold. And I love, for me, I've loved becoming like one big weird family, and watching the siblings like have more, they have more connection now than they did when they were, um, before they were adopted. So that's been really beautiful to watch them connect and bond, and have that sibling relationship, even though they're in separate homes. Like that to me has been amazing for my kids, and watching all of that kind of like the things that they've learned, and the growing that they've done, and the working through things that we've been able to do. That's been awesome. And so I think that offers, I mean, for me anyway, it offers like, it just backs that up, that like they don't have to live in the same home in order to establish and have a relationship and to be siblings. I think for me, that's kind of validated that. And I know we talked a lot about siblings and
Absolutely.
sibling relationships and the bonds that siblings have. But what about, because it's not just about child welfare, also parenting, what about people that have only children? What are some things that they can do to offer their kids similar experiences, and benefits that we've discussed, sibling relationships give?
So a lot of times it comes from our extended family, and so cousins. And a lot of times we
Yeah.
might then have cousins, or sometimes we have interesting families where our nieces and nephews, or our uncles, and so again, there's
Yeah.
there's sometimes where kids in a family are all around the same age, and if they're not, hopefully fostering this sense of community, and so finding other kids that are their age, and really creating these relationships, and starting to hopefully talk with other adults, and maybe even finding other singles, and their families, and saying, how can we help build some empathy? And these are some really cool techniques that we've learned to help
Yeah.
kind of help navigate conflict and for us adults to kind of stay calm and let them figure it out a little bit without snatching or screaming at each other or biting each other, and because with kids that could be really difficult. Only kids
Yeah.
are used to getting their own way. And so part of that is for us adults to really wait for a full sentence. Now, of course, a full sentence at 2 is different than a full sentence at 4 or 6,
Yeah.
but we're waiting for what would be biologically appropriate as a full sentence. Please, that is enough of a sentence for me, because they're asking for something,
Yeah.
um, versus I'm just going to grab it.
Yeah.
And I think that all of that starts to nurture the fact that no, we're going to be decent human beings. We're going to
Yeah.
ask for our needs to get met. And so when we're with other kids, and we might even say, what if I say no? How can, I mean, we can as adults start to model what to do when someone says, I don't want to.
Right.
I think also, well, I never loved Barney, but I really don't think sharing is caring. Okay. We can share, but oftentimes us adults have insisted that the minute someone asks for our toy, that
Yeah.
or the thing that we are playing with, we should give it up. And that is, I think, a really bad way to kind of raise kiddos, because it says that we don't have autonomy of our bodies or our things. And so
Right.
it's okay to say, not now. I will give it to you when I'm done. Or no, this is my special birthday present. I don't want to share that with anybody,
Yeah.
but you can have this toy. And so we can help kids navigate that. But that's also navigating also a lot of body autonomy. You don't have to hug that weird aunt that you really don't like that how they smell.
Yeah.
That's okay. You can give a fist bump or you can blow kisses. What can you do?
Right.
And helping to stand up for your kids when they're uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
And so really starting to have this concept that with siblings, or even we can practice without a sibling,
Yeah.
how can we ask for our needs to get met well
Yeah.
and be able to say no thank you when we're not comfortable with something.
Yeah.
And that's something that they can practice on siblings, they can practice on cousins, or they can practice on us. And I think that that's something that's really important. I do see a lot of, well, just a lot of kids, not even just only kids, where
Yeah.
they're literally grabbing something out of their adult's hand, or they're feeling their adult up because they want that hug. And it's like,
Yeah.
are you okay with that? And they go, oh, I just don't even notice anymore. It's like, but no, are you really okay with that? And they're like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not. It's okay for you to say, please get your hands off my chest. I'm not comfortable with
Yeah.
that. It's okay
Yeah.
to say, get your hand out of my back pocket. I don't like you doing that.
Yeah.
These are all okay things. And we get to teach our kids about body autonomy by us having that as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
all kids do know how to ask. When they're 1 and 2, they're still asking for a hug. Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Hmm.
an ask.
Hmm.
There doesn't even have
Yeah.
to be any words.
We're working on we're working on asking for hugs and stuff. One of ours, he's very he's very like handsy. He has sensory processing. So he's always like touching everything. So
Yeah.
we always joke that he's probably had every disease imaginable because he literally touches everything, walls and floors and everything. So we've been working on different sensory things with him, but a lot of that is you probably should ask before you touch the strange man in line at the store. Like we're working on that. The touching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
wanting to touch right now, knowing that you can touch this, but you should ask if you want to touch that man's pants.
Yeah. Yeah. I know they're really shiny. I
Yes.
get it. It's a weird choice in pants, but we don't gotta touch them. Yeah, we're working on that. He's I give him I say that as if he touches literally everyone all the time, and that's just he doesn't. He's just handsy. We're working on this. Squeeze your hands.
Yes.
Squeeze your hands. Um,
Yeah.
that's been an interesting navigation. You were talking about that, but it is fun to watch him, kind of not fun, sometimes frustrating, watching him navigate that with his siblings. So that's again another added benefit to having siblings, is navigating all of that. Like, okay, this is appropriate, not appropriate. This is healthy and not healthy. This is what we're doing. This is not what we're doing. And watching him navigate that with his siblings has been that's been very beneficial to him for sure. He's grown so much and we've been so proud of him lately. So that's been awesome. So coming up at the tail end of our time here. Is there anything you want to, any words of encouragement, anything you want to say to the parents out there navigating these sibling relationships?
My goodness. Okay, first of all, it stinks, but it's also awesome. And so
Yeah,
really just acknowledging that there are going to be really, really hard days and that not all families are going to look awesome and amazing and cohesive. The goal is that one day your family will have its own particular flavor of awesome and cohesiveness, and that might not look like that perfect family in your head, but it's going to be yours, and you get to
yeah,
help create that. And so I think that that's really important, and sometimes having a little bit of a picture that's realistic about a family that had the good days and the bad days in your head. And so sometimes we do go to TV families, but not the perfect ones, the ones who have the days where they have to sit down and talk it out. And those are going to be
yes,
the families that we can start to model ourselves after a little bit, not the perfect ones, because
yeah.
obviously that's too much stress.
They don't exist. It's not real. It's not real. Sometimes your kid wants to
It's
touch the
not
man's
real.
pants. It's not okay.
Yeah.
And those are
And
the
how
those
can
are
we
those
do
days where you're
things
like,
with,
but we have the conversations and we improve. And you know what? Tomorrow's a new day with new hope and new promises.
yeah,
And we rise and we do it again. And momming isn't
exactly.
easy. That is true. Nobody's perfect at it. We will fail so often, but the little successes that we have, I think sometimes we miss the little successes because we're looking for the big ones. And every little
Yeah.
success, every little win, every time he does this, every time, they make a compromise. Oh, hopscotch and Jeopardy. You know what? Let's play. How about if I ask you a trivia question while we're jumping and we'll play hopscotch Jeopardy? And then you go, amazing, you did it. You made a compromise. Those are the little wins that I think that we should be celebrating more. And I think that that's fantastic, modeling after families. That exactly right. Good days and bad days, better days and worse days. Life is messy, life is complicated. And when you have a bunch of kids in a home, 1, 2, 17, it just makes it more complicated because there's more personalities to navigate and deal with. So
Absolutely.
beautifully
And
said.
sometimes keeping a gratitude journal. This is what my kid did today. I had
Yeah.
3 whole minutes of quiet. I got to pee by myself.
Yep. Listen, if you can, any day you can pee by yourself is a good day in my book. That is a great day for
Yep.
sure. And I love focusing on the positive. There is so much power in positive thinking. So if you just can think of 3 things that were little victories in every day, I think that every day you'll start to see more victories. And I love that. So beautifully said. That's fantastic advice. As always, it's been a pleasure. And all right, we'll see you guys next time. Hey guys, thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our podcast. And if you'd like more information on how you can get plugged in with our mission and our vision, as well as get support services, you can check us out on the web at fosterchange.com.